Well, welcome everybody to this NEBOSH webinar. Very good to have you here with us. My name is Will Taylor. I'm the owner and founder of Compassa. We are a GOLD NEBOSH Learning Partner, and we have some incredibly high NEBOSH pass rates. So I thought I would spend some time with you, maybe a couple of hours perhaps, sharing how we achieve our high pass rates. And hopefully you will take these tips, these techniques, onto your exam and hopefully pass your exam on the very first attempt. So welcome to all of you. I've looked at your names and your emails and I recognize a lot of names there. So some of you are already Compassa students. Very welcome to you. Lots of you I don't recognize. So some of you are not Compassa students and very welcome to you as well. One or two names on there that I recognized who are actually known NEBOSH tutors and trainers, and so very welcome to you too, and I hope you use these techniques to go help your own students pass this exam. So without further ado, we're going to get into things. What I would like you to do though is feel free to ask questions. So you have a couple of different ways you can ask questions. You can either use the chat function. I see some people have already started chatting there. So Russell and Mohammed have said hi, so I'm just going to type hello. There you go. Feel free to drop some questions in there and chat. You also have a Q&A function. So at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A. You can ask anonymous questions if you like. So feel free to put your questions in there and I will answer your question at an appropriate time. So we're not kind of bouncing all over the place. I'll deal with the questions at the right place at the right time. We are recording this. You should get a link to the recording, and also we're going to put this on YouTube as well for all the other thousands and thousands of people who need some help. So let's get into it. So firstly, for those of you who do not know me, my name is Will Taylor. So I am a chartered member of IOSH and I'm the founder of Compassa. And as far as I know, we are the only NEBOSH provider in the world to make courses the way we do, which is using interactive or smart video technology. So everything we do is delivered through video technology, plus all of the additional written materials, case studies on top of all of that. So we make the world's only interactive video courses for IOSH and NEBOSH. I used to be a team leader in a NEBOSH exam team, and I was an examiner for a number of years, both for the IGC, the NGC, the fire certificate, and also the diploma as well. And I used to write exam questions for the diploma. I've got both NEBOSH diplomas, both the health and safety and environmental diploma. And for the health and safety diploma, I actually was awarded 2 Best Candidate Awards, which basically means out of all of the hundreds or the 1,000 or so NEBOSH diploma candidates that year, I got the best result on Unit B and the best result overall across all 3 units. So I am a little bit of a walking encyclopedia. I do not know everything. No, definitely don't know everything. But I do have an ability to study and remember large amounts of information. Rubbish at implementing that information, my colleagues would tell me, but I can remember it. I've also got a degree in health and safety. I've done a total of 13 different NEBOSH assessments, whether they're projects or exams. And I've been a health and safety professional since 2001, so going on nearly 25 years now. So needless to say, I've got a fair bit of experience and a fair bit of knowledge to share with you. The 12 steps I'm going to take you through tonight have delivered for Compassa an 88% pass rate since we launched our NEBOSH General Certificate course in 2022, so 2022. That has been pretty consistent. So the average over the last 12 months, funnily enough, is also 88%. So we're nearly 9 out of 10. I think that's as high as you're going to get. So that's actually higher. I always keep an eye on the competition. And I sometimes see the competitors bragging about their latest pass rates, their record pass rate. And it warms my heart to see that their record pass rate is less than our overall pass rate. So that's pretty wonderful. Usually competitors who beat our pass rates are usually very small, very small companies with a dedicated trainer who's just excellent. Small classroom course, great trainer, great people, sometimes get 100% pass rates. But in terms of the e-learning courses and the live online virtual courses, usually the pass rates do not come anywhere close to the likes of 88%. Obviously, exceptions may occur, of course, and sometimes our pass rate, some months we do not have a great pass rate, but overall, 88%. It's not just thanks to the 12-step master plan. I would also say part of it is just down to course design, down to the course materials which we provide, and also the tuition. We do a lot of mock exam preparation as well, and I think that does play a big part in it. Now, we provide you with a ton of resources. So in addition to this webinar, you've also got access to NEBOSH guidance on the NEBOSH website. So make good use of the NEBOSH website. There's a lot of stuff there. As part of this webinar, if you've registered for the webinar, not if you're on YouTube watching this, but if you've registered via Zoom for the webinar, you should get a free PDF from us, How to Smash Your Exam. That should get delivered to you by email after this webinar. It looks something like that. Feel free to use that. You've also got access to our full YouTube channel. So if you just want to do a quick search on YouTube for NEBOSH, you will find our channel. Loads of stuff, particularly check the playlists. The playlists have loads of stuff that's NEBOSH related. But in terms of paid resources, if you wanted a bit more, you could head over to our website. We offer a study book for this. I'm going to show you the study book as we go through this. It's very, very useful. We also have a prep course, so an online course on exam technique. And also, if you're really in need of help, we offer something called the Rescue Package, which basically gives you access to the full NGC course or IGC course with us, with my tutor support and my mock exam preparation. So loads of stuff there, and you can find all that on the NEBOSH, the Compassa website. Just head over to NEBOSH up there. Anyway, first things first. Before you even think about exam technique, you have to get ready for the exam. So there is an element of training involved in this. And to be fair, there are no shortcuts to your NEBOSH exam. You are going to have to train hard, just like in the movie Rocky IV. This is Rocky training hard in the Russian snow. Lots of hours of work go in. And even though you might train very, very hard, you're still going to get hammered at the exam. And in the most recent exam, it was September, which we've just received the results for, there were 2 questions which absolutely seemed to have thrown everybody, including my own students. There was a really tough question on human factors and another tough question on the hierarchy of control, and they just battered people, and they did very poorly on those. Not sure why, they seemed pretty straightforward to me, but most people struggled. That said, with the training and with the plan, you should still achieve a hard-earned victory, hopefully. And it doesn't mean it's going to be easy, though. The most important thing is this, I would say, and I think boxers would agree with this if we carry on the boxing analogy. It's like every boxer has a plan. You enter the ring understanding your opponents and knowing what their strategy is going to be, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and you have an approach. Same thing with football. You know the strengths and weaknesses of the opposing team, and you will have a plan as you get into it. And you need to do the same thing with the NEBOSH exam. You need to have a plan. And these 12 steps I'm going to walk you through are your plan. To change movie and go on to a Batman movie, what I would like to draw your attention to is this quote here where it says, "What matters is our plan." So my first encouragement to you is this: no matter what NEBOSH throw at you in the exam, stick to this plan and follow it consistently. Don't stress about the exam, just follow your plan and you will get the best possible mark you can. Whether that's enough to pass, I don't know, but you will get the best possible mark that you can. So what is the plan? Well, here is the plan. These are the 12 steps. So just a quick outline of what we're going to go through is step 1, we are going to read the questions. Step 2, we then read the scenario. Step 3, we choose a question to answer first. And usually I would say choose the easiest one first. Then you're going to set a time limit, because managing your time is important. You don't want to spend 4 hours on a 10-mark question. You won't have enough time to do the full exam. Then we're going to spend most of our time in this webinar talking about these 4 steps here, because this is where you pass or fail, particularly this one here. Step 5, reading the question carefully, understanding what the question is after. You pass or fail on this one here. I can't say it any more brutally than that. If you do not read the question, if you do not understand the question, you are not going to pass the exam. Simple as. Once you have understood the question, then you will read the scenario again and you will start to find things to talk about. You're going to come up with maybe some points that you could make, maybe some evidence in the scenario that you could use in your answer. Most questions are linked to the scenario in some way. There are exceptions to that. Some questions have no link to the scenario. We will talk about that very shortly. But most link you back to the scenario, so it makes sense that you're going to read that scenario again, finding points and evidence along the way. You're then going to take all of that and you're going to create an answer plan. So basically a shopping list of things you want to say in your answer. It might be 10 things, 15 things, 20 things. The key thing though is that there are more points than marks. And there's a very common mistake I see on a lot of exam papers. A 10-mark question, the learner has 10 answers. Like, why? Why only 10 answers? Why 10 answers? Give more. In your course materials, you might have 20 things you can talk about. Talk about those 20 things. Just write more things. Because if out of the 10 answers, say 3 are wrong, you're only going to get 7 marks out of 10. But what if you write 15 answers? And out of the 15, 9 are correct and 6 are wrong. You've now got 9 marks instead of 7. You've got an extra 2 marks. And following this approach over the entire exam, getting an extra mark here and an extra 2 marks there, maybe an extra 3, 4 marks, over the full exam, that makes a massive difference. And it's going to change your result significantly. It makes a difference between passing or failing. Someone's asked the question, what topics would you say are the easiest questions to answer? Well, partly that depends on you and your understanding of the topics. Some topics you will be good at, some you'll be weak at. I would say it's not so much about the topics, but it might be about the questions. Some questions can be fairly easily answered with use of the course materials. Some questions focus like a narrow part of the course materials, and you can find one little page which has like a lot of like a list of stuff, and the link with the scenario is very, very clear, and you could write an answer very easily with like one page of your course materials with a bit of use of the scenario at the same time. The hardest questions to answer are ones where it targets a very broad section of the course. Like it might target the entire risk assessment section, or even worse, there are questions which target every single element, elements 1 through 4. It's testing my knowledge on absolutely everything here, which means there isn't one bit in the course materials you can look at. Those are probably the hardest questions to go for. But ultimately, it just comes down to which one do I find easiest? Which one do I prefer? So you're going to write an answer plan there. Once you've written that answer plan, you are then going to write a full answer. And we're going to talk about this thing called the P principle, which is basically a communication technique. And to be clear, it is not mandatory. You could not follow the P principle if you wanted to. That's absolutely fine. The key thing is that you write a full answer which demonstrates your understanding, and in most cases has a connection back to that scenario. So it's an answer which demonstrates understanding and has a connection to the scenario. Personally, I find the P principle a very useful kind of acronym. I'm going to make a point, I'm going to explain my point, and I'm going to back it up with some evidence from the scenario. But just to be absolutely clear, because I know the P principle does tend to confuse a lot of people, Don't get distracted by the P principle. The key rule is this, and this is going to sound so obvious. Answer the flipping question. That's it. It's all you have. That's all you have to do. All we have to do, eh? But that is all you have to do. So if you find yourself worrying about the P principle and how do I use the P principle on this and how do I use the P principle on that, I would say, oh, okay, you are the type of person who is overthinking the P principle. Point, evidence, explanation. Stop thinking about it and just read the question and answer the question. That's all you have to do. But for some people, the P principle is kind of a useful methodology. It is for people who struggle to communicate. If you're the kind of person who just can't get the answer from your brain onto the sheet, onto the Word document, if you're the person who's like, I just don't know what to say, the P principle is a useful framework around which you could structure your answers. There's something I want to say, I'm going to explain it, and I need to put some evidence from the scenario, if useful. We'll come back to that later when we get to step 8. After step 8, it's basically just repeating that process for every single question. So you go to the next easiest question, the one that scares you least, and then the next question and the next question, all the way through. And then you're going to go to bed and have a good sleep, and you'll wake up the next day, and hopefully you will have some time that you can review and improve your answers the next day. And then do whatever are the final things on your answer sheet, like make sure you got your name on there, the word count, your references, and then submit it, and submit it before the deadline. And from the moment it's submitted, just forget all about it. Stop worrying, focus on NG2 or IG2 if you've still got that to do. So that's the plan we're going to go through. Hopefully you're ready. Let's get into it. So step 1, skip the scenario. Just go past it. Just go straight to the questions, in my opinion. Because going straight to the questions is going to tell you what you're going to look for in that scenario. Now, your first reaction is kind of this. It's like this panic face. You're gonna see some questions you don't like. Here's just a brutal bit of advice for you. Expect to have some questions you do not like. You are going to have at least one question, probably 3, maybe 8, I don't know. There are going to be some questions that you are not going to like. Stop worrying about it and just accept it. It's not supposed to be an easy exam. Just resign yourself to it. And so when you see that brutal question which makes no sense to you, or it's a topic you hate, just say to yourself, there you are. Will told me I would meet you, and there you are. Well, nice to meet you, horrible question. And then just move on and focus on the easy questions. Simple as that. So read the questions first, and ask yourself some questions like, which ones scare me less? Which ones seem easier? Which ones seem harder? And this is just a personal choice. Which topics are being covered? Got a bit of risk assessment, a bit of human factors, a bit of incident investigation. Oh, look, there's a legal question. Oh, there's a financial question. Just like, what topics are covered? And here's a really cool thing. Do you recognize any questions? If you've done a lot of exam questions with your course provider, you might be fortunate that you've actually already answered that question in your course, which is kind of cool, isn't it? So here at Compassa, we do a lot of mock exam questions, and quite often we'll see one of those questions appear on the real exam. Now, of course, it's a different scenario, so the answer will be different, but the approach to answering that question will broadly be the same. So if you've kind of figured out how to answer it on this scenario, hopefully you can figure out how to answer it on another scenario. Different scenario, different answer, of course. You can't just copy and paste an answer from one exam to the next. Someone's asking me, after this, are we able to ask questions? You can ask questions whenever you like. You have a chat function and you have a Q&A function. Just type your question into the chat or the question and answer, and I will address those at a convenient moment. So read the questions first. And so here's an example. This is the sample exam paper on the NEBOSH website. I'm not sharing anything confidential here. You can see it's a sample behind it. So just read the questions and see which ones do you like? Which ones confuse you? And so you might see this one at the bottom here. This one kind of looks a bit confusing because you've kind of got this policy statement there. So well, that's a bit strange. Whereas this one seems quite straightforward and that one seems quite straightforward. This one's just a bit weird. But if you've done the Compassa course, we have a very, very similar question to that in our Compassa course. So if you're a Compassa student and you see that, you go, ha ha, I know how to answer you, or at least I know how to approach you, because I made a mess of you in my mock exam, but then I got feedback and now I know how to do it. So that might be the one you answer first if you're a Compassa student. So step 2, once you've read through all the questions, now go read the scenario. And I would actually read it a couple of times personally. Read it twice. And remember this, each sentence is there for a reason. Each sentence is there for a reason. NEBOSH are not out to trap you. They're not out to catch you out. They don't put things in the scenario which are not necessary. Everything in the scenario is there for a reason, and it's to help give you some context. It's there to give you a clue. It's there to help you answer a question. These NEBOSH scenarios and questions go through a committee, and the committee will review it and they'll say, why is that in the scenario? Doesn't seem relevant to any of the questions. Would be helpful if we just took that out. It wouldn't make any difference. So everything in that scenario is there for a reason. So literally every sentence, ask yourself, why is that in there? It must help me answer a question. So read it twice, very, very carefully. And the next thing I would say is, depending on your level of IT skill, you can either print it out or you can put it into a Word document. Me personally, I'll put it into a Word document. And you'll see why soon. Now you can either just copy and paste it. Over the past couple of years, we have been allowed to just copy paste into a Word document. But there are some other things you can do as well. If you have a modern version of Microsoft Word, you can literally just open the PDF document in Microsoft Word and it will do it, and you can then edit it and type into it and do all kinds of things. If you can't do that, you can just go onto Google and just type in Word to PDF converter. And there are loads of free websites which will convert a Word document to PDF. But the easiest thing is just to copy and paste it and dump it in a Word document. That's the best approach. The other approach, if you like pen and paper, you can just print out, say, 10 copies of the exam paper, and then you can make some notes on it. That's a little bit slower though, so I wouldn't recommend doing that unless you have to. So get it into a Word document if you can. So literally just highlight it, copy, paste, done. Step 3, you're then going to choose the easiest question. Now, why choose the easiest question first? Well, it's because the easiest question, you're going to answer it quite well because it is the easiest one, and that is going to give you a big confidence boost. And you want a confidence boost early on. If it's a nice, easy 10-mark question, and you can get 15 things on the exam paper, you are going to feel much better about this exam, which is going to help you with the other questions. It's also going to warm up your brain and get your brain working. However, just because it's easy doesn't mean you should half-heart it or half-arse it, as some would say. Put in max effort, because if it is an easy question, it's worth 10 marks, 15 marks, max effort because you want to get all of those marks. Let's face it, if you've got an easy 10-mark question and you can get all 10 marks, you are 25%, almost 25% there to passing, and one question. If it's an easy 15 or 20-mark question, and there are some easy 20-mark questions, you are nearly halfway there to passing. So easy ones, make sure you put in full effort to absolutely smash them. Right, now onto the time limits. So this is going to get a little bit mathematical, and this is a broad guideline. Don't get too scientific with it. But we do have to manage our time. Here, now, some of you will say, well, why do we have to do that? We have 24 hours. Well, you don't have 24 hours, do you? You have to sleep, you have to eat, you have to go to the toilet, you have to take a break. Maybe you have families and responsibilities, maybe you have work. So you don't have 24 hours. You might have 8, 9, 10 hours, maybe only 6 hours. Work out how much time you really have. The exam opens at 11 and it closes at 11. Now, once you've worked out your hours, you should then multiply the hours by 60, and that will give you the number of minutes you have in total. So you want the number of minutes. You then divide the number of minutes by the number of marks, that is 100 marks. That gives you how many minutes for each mark. And then you multiply that by the number of marks in the question. So let me walk you through an example of how that works. Let's say you've decided that you have 8 hours of free time. 8 hours is 480 minutes. So we divide 480 minutes by 100 marks, and that is we have a maximum of 4.8 minutes per mark. Something like 4 minutes, 40 seconds, something like that. And if you've got a question which is worth 20 marks, that means the maximum time you can spend on that question is 96 minutes. And so at that point, you just set your watch, you set your timer, set your stopwatch, get your phone out, set an alarm on here, whatever you want to do. All right, in 96 minutes, I'm going to move on to the next question. Simple as that. So you start to follow the steps. You read the question very carefully, you read your scenario, create your answer plan, write the answer, right? And as soon as it goes beep, 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 like you need to move on now. Now, you do have to manage your time within the question, so don't spend all 96 minutes just reading the scenario. Yeah, so check the timer as you go through it, but try and get a full answer written by the end of those 96 minutes, and then as soon as that timer goes off, move on to the next question. Because if you submit an answer paper, and let's say the last question has not been answered, you've just lost all of the marks for that question. If that's a 10-mark question, you now need to get 45 marks out of 90. And that's a lot harder than getting 45 marks out of 100. So you must answer all of the questions. Now at this point, we're going to start to read the exam question. But before we do this, I actually want to give you a little bit of technological help. So I've got an answer sheet here before I do. So this is an example of an answer sheet. And there's a problem with this answer sheet which absolutely gets people. And the problem is this. You can see I've just kind of put my cursor in there. I'm now going to type. Can you hear me typing? Can you see typing? No, nothing is typing. Now, this does cause a bit of a panic with students on exam day. They're like, oh no, it doesn't work. I don't understand. Now, it's very simple. Calm down. Calm down. Just follow my mouse up here. See that little button there? It says viewing. We're in viewing mode. Click on it. Go to editing. And now I can type. Just remember that. Top right corner, viewing, editing. Put it onto editing and you'll be able to type. There you go. You can thank me later for that. Just saved you a heart attack. Right. We are now going to get into the main 4 steps. So just to kind of clarify where we have very quickly covered all of these. We've done that. We're now going to spend our time here, which is where the bulk of this webinar is going to be. So we're going to read the question very, very carefully. All right, let me get to the right slide. There we are. So now you'll notice there's a little bit of humor here. Hopefully NEBOSH won't get too upset. This is from a Indiana Jones movie. I think it's Raiders of the Lost Ark. And you'll notice we've got some Egyptian hieroglyphs. Now, NEBOSH have a reputation of asking questions that don't make sense. Like people say this, that they ask unintelligible questions and things like that. I'll be honest, I don't agree with that at all, and I will explain why. very shortly. But I think NEBOSH questions are usually very, very clear. So this is not a NEBOSH exam question. The first thing you have to do is you have to read the exam question very carefully. And I'm going to give you a big fat red alert here. You will pass or fail on this step. Skip this step, you're going to have a car crash. Not a literal car crash, but you're going to have a crash on the exam. You pass or fail on this step. There's a saying amongst NEBOSH tutors, and if you're a NEBOSH tutor, you'll know this. This is a very smug NEBOSH tutor, by the way. I don't recommend being smug. But a smug NEBOSH tutor would say RTFQ, which stands for read the question. I'm not going to tell you what the F stands for, but that's what NEBOSH tutors say. Read the something question. Because most of the time when people fail, it's because they didn't read the something question. I cannot emphasize this enough. What I want you to do is basically get your dictionary out and read the question word by word, dissect it into little pieces, chop it apart, because every single word in that question is there for a reason. Every single word matters. And earlier I mentioned 2 tough NEBOSH questions on the September exam where people had a car crash. What did they get wrong? They didn't read the question. Simple as that. I've read their answers and I go, yeah, that answer's not answering that question. So either you didn't read the question or you just didn't understand the question. I don't know which one it is, but one of those 2 things went wrong. You need to make sure you read the question. Now, there are signposts in the question to stop you from going off track. Pay attention to the signposts because they tell you what the question's about. So let me show you some signposts. Notice some of these words are in italics. They're signposts. They're pointing you towards something and away from something else. So where it says future, it says here, the future algae removal work. Well, it's pointing you towards that work, the future work, not the one before, not the one in the past. It's about the one in the future. And it's pointing you towards suitable and sufficient here as well. And there's a whole stem here as well, which is talking about HSG 65. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff here. It's pointing you towards things. Again, NEBOSH are not trying to catch you out. Let's look at the basic structure of this question. First, we have a title. The title is actually quite useful because the title tells you what part of the syllabus this is testing. That might be very useful. If you look in your course materials, there's a section on, say, risk assessment here. And so you could look at the risk assessment section. The risk assessment section is going to help you answer this question. So it helps you narrow down which part of the course you're being tested on. You then have the question. Some questions have a little bit of an introductory topic to it. So if I just go back a little bit and look at some of these, some questions have kind of a bit of an intro to kind of set the scene to the question, and then you have the actual question there. Yeah, expect that can happen. That is quite common. So you've got the question. Where are we? There we are. And then we've got the number of marks. And then we've got the stem. So this thing underneath where it says note, that's called a stem. The stems are super important. Do not ignore the stem. Ignore the stem at your peril. It is just as important as the question, because it points you in the right direction, or it gives you key instructions that you must follow. So let's just dissect this a little bit. I'm going to get some text on the screen. Hopefully you'll be able to see me type it. So it says based on the scenario only. So what that means is that only answers inferred from the scenario will count. There we are. Only answers from the scenario will count. It means no theoretical answers. That's what that means. Comment. Well, what should we do? Well, I tell you what. Let's go to Google, and let's type in comment meaning? Comment means a verbal or written remark expressing an opinion or a reaction. So you're giving your opinion. You're giving your opinion. Okay, so if we go back to the slide, we'll write down, give your opinion. Give your opinion. That over there. There we are. On whether. Now, if you're a non-native English speaker, then you might not know what the word weather means, and it's not the weather as in the rain. It's a different type of weather. Let's type in here. Weather meaning. Weather means it's a choice between alternatives. A statement applies whichever the alternatives mentioned. So it's about two choices, two alternatives. And the alternatives here are, is the risk assessment suitable and sufficient, or is it not suitable and sufficient? So whether, let me type in, I'll say, is it or isn't it? On whether the risk assessment. So risk assessment. So it's risk assessment. It's not an audit. It's not an inspection. It's not anything else you might think of. Not the culture. It's not any other problem, any other issue. It's the risk assessment and only the risk assessment. So comment on whether the risk assessment, and notice the word the. What's the? Well, the is singular. It's singular. There's only one risk assessment. Which one? Well, the one in the scenario. I know that's stating the obvious, but for example, you might get a question that says the accident. Like which one? The one in the scenario. Or it might say the shop accident, or the warehouse accident, or the machine accident. Which accident? The one involving the machine in the scenario. Because if you have 2 accidents or 3 accidents mentioned in the scenario, like the last exam paper I saw had 2 different accidents. So which one was the question about? It was about this one. So pay attention to that. The risk assessment for the future algae work. So the future. So that's like ahead of us in time. The future algae removal work. What work? The algae removal work. Not the other work. The algae removal work is suitable and sufficient. Now, at that point, you might be thinking, what on earth is that? Well, it says here in the STEM, the HSE document, HSG65, Managing for Health and Safety, states that a risk assessment must be suitable and sufficient. All right, so that's quite useful. Why? So basically what we're being asked to do is, we're being asked to compare the risk assessment for the algae removal work. So here's your risk assessment. There's your algae removal work. We're asked to compare it against what HSG 65 says about being suitable and sufficient. So HSG 65 tells us this is what makes a risk assessment suitable and sufficient. It has to do these things. And you are then asking, does this risk assessment do what that says or not? If it does, what does it do well? If it doesn't, what does it do badly? Might be a bit of both in there. It's not asking just for positives. It's not asking just for negatives, is it? It's not asking for the positives or the negatives. It's just asking you to give your opinion on whether it's suitable or sufficient or not. Yeah, it's like that give your opinion thing. It's like, we've had the budget today. There you go. We had the budget. That's topical news. I'm not going to say anything political. Comment on whether you think, comment on whether the budget is suitable and sufficient for the state of the country. So you can say, well, it's good in this way. It's bad in that way. Here are my reasons. Yeah. Now, that's a bit of a vague question because define good for the country. Well, you need a standard, don't you? Well, in this question, HSG 65 gives us a standard. It tells us what a good risk assessment looks like. A good risk assessment is one that does these things. That's a good risk assessment. Now, compare the two. Let me have a quick look at the questions. I can see some chats coming in. NEBOSH requires referencing of sources used for exam questions. Would the student's source of notes be taken into consideration by the examiner when marking? No, no, the examiner will not mark your references in the slightest. Not in the examiner will not be particularly interested in your references. The purpose of the references is for you to be open and honest about what sources you've looked at, so that if the examiner thinks that what you've written is very similar or identical to an internet source, and they're wondering whether you've cheated by copying large amounts of things from the internet, the fact that you've referenced it in your reference box at the end helps you defend yourself and say, hang on, I was honest and transparent that I used that source. But it will not get you any marks. Will some references be looked upon more favorably? No, yes, they don't really care. This is not a question of anything being favored. It's just about you being honest about where you got information from. Is it okay to use the Compassa handbook as a reference? Yeah, sure. In fact, you should, I think. You should. If you use the Compassa handbook, you should reference the Compassa handbook. Or if you use the RRC book, because you can buy that one as well, you can reference that too. Any website you use, and so on. So you could say you have utilized the internet. Oh, yes, you can use the internet. It's an open book exam. You are allowed to use pretty much anything on the internet, except for AI sources. That's all. You can't use ChatGPT, you can't use Copilot, you're not allowed to use the Google AI system when you do a Google search, Google Gemini and all that kind of thing. You're not allowed to use those. That's very clear in the NEBOSH malpractice policy. But after that, any blog posts, news articles, online databases, various study books. I mean, I've got a study book here. This is for the fire certificate. There you go, a bit of free advertising for RMS. You can read a study book if you want to. It's fine. You would have to name all the websites. Yeah, you'd have to name all the websites. Yeah. So log them as you go. If you've used it, of course. If you looked at it and didn't use it, then no, you don't have to admit that. But if you've gone and taken some information and like copied and pasted it, then yeah, you should use it. Okay, so let's move on to that. Those are the only questions that are relevant at this time. So suitable and sufficient. So when you read the word suitable and sufficient, this might be the face you're pulling. HSG 65, like what's all that about? What you talking about, Willis? Okay, if you don't understand the topic of the question, this is where you're going to have to do a bit of quick revision. So go get your study book. If you're a Compassa student, go get your Compassa study book. If you're not a Compassa student and you've bought it, then go and get it. Go and open it up. And go and ask yourself, what's HSG 65? What makes a risk assessment suitable and sufficient? And you can use the search function. You can literally just use the search function. I'll just show you how it works. If I go to, here it is, I've got the NEBOSH International General Certificate there. If I do Control F, is that working there? Control F. Yeah, you got Control F. Look, I did a search for gender earlier. I was searching for gender in something. Let me search for suitable and sufficient. I've got 6 mentions. Oh, look at that. Look, it's taking me straight to the table of contents. I'm just going to click on that. Click, bang, done. There we are. That is what makes a risk assessment suitable and sufficient. It's all there. So I can have a quick look at that. That's really useful to help me understand what is this question after. And there we are. So you can find those 2 pages. Super useful as a quick reference guide. So you have to understand the topic. So when I say read the question, you have to understand the words in the question and what it's asking for, but you also have to understand the topic as well. If you don't get the topic, like, go to the book quickly to remind yourself. Anyway, move on. We have then the number of marks. That's useful because the number of marks determines how many correct technical points you need to make to get full marks. So on this question, you're going to need to make at least 12 comments, at least 12, to get 12 marks. But preferably, you might want to make more points, say more things. The marking scheme for a 12-mark question is probably going to have about 20 things on it. So there's lots to say. So try and write 15 things, 18 things, 20, 25 things. Write more if you can. That way you have a better chance. Now, someone earlier in the chat asked me, what about the word count? Sir, can I use more than 3,000 words or not? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. I'll give you more detail about that later. However, here's a caveat. And NEBOSH are going to be very happy that I say this to you. It's not about the quantity. It is about the quality. So when I say just write more answers down, listen, I don't mean just write down any crap you want to write down. Writing random answers will not get you marks. Write down things which you think could be mark-worthy or should be mark-worthy. Like if you think, I think that's on the right lines, write it down. But don't think you can just grab whole sections of the course materials and dump it on your exam answer sheet and think, oh, that'll do. That'll do. I'll give you some examples of that later where people gave like it's kind of on the right lines, but it's actually irrelevant to it. It's just irrelevant to the question, even though it's kind of the same topic. It's about quality, not quantity. I've known people, I looked at some papers today, 6,000 words, and they failed with like 40 marks because half the words are just irrelevant. They worked very hard, but I'm reading it, I'm going, yeah, it just doesn't. It's not what, that's not on the marking scheme. But you can write more than 3,000 words and you will not be penalized for it. So, move on. Right, I want to get on to this, what I call the three amigos. The three amigos are basically the three types of NEBOSH question. As a broad rule, there are three types of NEBOSH question. You have questions that are theory only. And they are, in my opinion, the easiest type of question because you can just look up the answer. You can look up the answer in the study book or on Google or online or a guidance document, find the answer, and then write it out. Simple as that. The most common type of question is a question where you'll get marks for theoretical answers, but also for linking the theory to the scenario where applicable. So there'll be a mixture of theory and a mixture of stuff from the scenario to get marks. The third type of answer is an answer where only things from the scenario will get marks. Now, those things might be stated explicitly in the scenario, or they might be implicit. They might not be stated explicitly. There might be clues in the scenario, and you have to infer answers. So don't expect the scenario to literally just tell you the answers. It won't. It won't. There might be some things which are very clear and very obvious, but most of the time you're going to have to work it out from clues. It's a bit of a game of Cluedo. Yeah, so a question on, we'll look at this later, organizational factors. What are the organizational factors which could have contributed to the accident? The scenario doesn't tell you what the organizational factors are. It just gives you what happened. And based on what happened, you're going to have to try and figure out what was going on in the background. Was it a lack of management commitment? Was it a lack of budgets? Is the risk assessment process flawed? Is there a lack of training for everyone involved? It's like, you need to figure it out. It doesn't tell you that though. So for example, if you've got someone who uses a ladder and uses a ladder very, very badly, very unsafely, well, can't you infer from that the person did not receive any ladder training? It doesn't say that in the scenario. But that's what 2 and 2 put together equals, yeah? It's about clues. So it's not just a case of just spotting the answers in the scenario. It's not as easy as that. Anyway, let's look at these three types of question. Here's an example of Amigo number 1. Advise the MD on the differences between an audit and an inspection. Notice that we have no stem. This is theory only. There's no stem. There's no reference to the scenario whatsoever, except for maybe the MD. But just tell the MD what the difference is between an audit and a workplace inspection. It's as simple as that, theory only. So all you have to do is you go to your study book, go to your Compassa study book, ask yourself, what are the differences? Go look up the audit section and voila, you'll find this. the differences between audits and inspections. There are 10 answers there. It's often a 10-mark question. Oh, there you go, 10 answers. That'll do you. That should get you all of the marks, or very close to all of the marks. Now, a little bit of a warning on questions like this, and there are many questions like this, but just a bit of a warning. Do not copy or plagiarize anything you find online or any books and try and pass it off as your own work. Even if you reference it, you shouldn't just copy stuff. This is what the exam instructions say. It says, neither should you cut and paste blocks of text from the internet or other sources. So don't just cut and paste. Even if you reference it, don't just cut and paste it. You should reference it, but just write it out in your own words, because you may get accused of, or you may get accused of cheating. And even if you get away with it, even if at the end they give you the results and you're found not guilty of cheating, the process of being investigated for malpractice takes 50 working days. So it already takes 50 days just to get your exam results. You want to add on another 50 working days? It's going to take 100 days to get your result. That's a very long time. And it's going to be very stressful too, because you're going to have to explain yourself to NEBOSH and you will have no idea whether they will accept your explanation or not. And at the end, well, let's have a look and see what happens at the end of it, because there's a whole load of consequences to this. So this is a screenshot from the latest ethical malpractice report. In the quarter of April to June of this year, they banned 463 people and issued over 2,000 penalties. They identified nearly 1,700 learners as trying to cheat. There's a tremendous amount of cheating, and there's a tremendous amount of catching people cheating as well. I can tell you this, examiners can spot cheats a mile off. They can spot your use of AI a mile off as well. And NEBOSH also use Turnitin technology, which will compare what you've written against what everyone else has written. And it will also compare what you've written against everything available on the internet. And it will highlight things which appear to have been copied, and it will give it a score. And the examiner can then look at the original source and what you've written, and then they can make a decision as to whether they think you've cheated or not. Can you show an example in writing the answer in your own words, please? Yeah, you'll see some examples of answers soon. Don't worry, because when we get to the bit where it's answer the question, yes, I am going to show you some examples of that. But in terms of answering the theory questions, you're just going to have to paraphrase it in your own words. So you would say something like, go back to this, I'd say, one of the differences between an audit and inspection is that audits focus on systems and procedures, whereas inspections will focus on physical things, like they'll focus on the workplace equipment, the workplace itself, and also the actions and behaviors of people at work. And just spoken about it, done that. That's it, done. 2 marks there. So just write out something like that. Don't just copy and paste a table. That's not going to get you very far. Next type of question. Let's take a moment to read this one. Within the health and safety management system, the role of manager has specific health and safety responsibilities for assessing removal requirements. What could be done to help ensure the manager is more effective in carrying out their health and safety role and responsibilities? 10 marks. You should support your answer, where applicable, using relevant information from the scenario. This is one of those questions where you can use some theory from the course materials, theory from online sources, and you can also use things from the scenario as well. And you can kind of combine the answer with maybe some theoretical answers and some stuff which is just taken from the scenario, things that are obvious from the scenario. Manager could do this and could do that. We could support the manager in this way, and so on. So take ideas from materials and internet, link them to the scenario, and make your own suggestions based on the scenario. So again, back to the book to help you with this one, and you can look up how can we make managers become more effective. You'll find that there's a whole section in the book which talks about how we can help managers become more effective. And a lot of this kind of seems generic, But just think of this. Maybe in the scenario, you've got a manager who tells a forklift driver, the condition of the forklift is your responsibility. Like, you're the forklift driver, you're responsible for keeping it safe. Does that sound like a manager who knows what they're talking about? No, because a manager is responsible for safety. So the warehouse manager, for example, who has forklifts, the warehouse manager is also responsible for the safety of the forklifts. So if you read that in the scenario, you might say, well, hang on, don't we want to do this? Maybe we should provide some training in health and safety responsibilities to this manager. And then you could add on maybe a little bit of extra text. You could write something like this. We should provide training in H&S responsibilities to the manager. I'll click so you can see what I'm typing. And then we'll say, because the manager does not seem to understand their own responsibilities. Yeah, and then you could add on a little bit more. They tell the FLT driver they are not responsible for the FLT, for the safety of the FLT, which is not true, because all managers are responsible for safety. You could write something like that in one paragraph. That'll take maybe 3 lines, 4 lines, something like that. And so can you see how there's this very generic point here about training, but there's something in a scenario which is a clue to say this manager is not trained, and therefore you can kind of cobble together a bit of an answer. And that might get you 2 marks, by the way. You might get a mark for correctly talking about the training, and then you'll get a mark for mentioning this bit here. Might get you 2 marks, depending on the marking scheme, of course. It's all down to the marking scheme. There might also be something in the scenario where the manager's just hiding in his or her office and they're never out there on the shop floor. Well, there's something there about visibility. So you could say, well, managers should be more visible. They should go out and visit the warehouse a lot more, and that way they'll be more seen, and that would encourage people to work more safely. So when I say combine theory and stuff that's going on in the scenario, that's what I mean. Now, to be clear, what's written in the study book is not exhaustive. It's not exhaustive. So there may be other things that can be said. Do not consider the course materials to be a Bible. It's not the Bible. It's not the holy inspired word of God. It is a reference document which is very useful, but there might be things in the scenario which are possibly correct too. So there may be some very obvious things sometimes. So you can think outside of the course materials, outside of the box. But basically, you can use your course materials as a basis for your answer, especially if some of these are relevant to the scenario. Maybe some of these are very, very relevant to the scenario because you can literally see some of these things in the scenario. And you think, okay, well, that's definitely relevant. I'm definitely going to mention this. Back to the 3 amigos. The very third amigo is this one here. Only points from the scenario are going to get marks. Only things inferred from the scenario can get marks. And an example would be based on the scenario only. All of these questions are going to say based on the scenario only. It might say underneath it, actually. It might ask you a question and it might say note based on the scenario, or let me get it right. It'll say the answer. This is how they ask it. The answer must be based on the scenario only. Let me just stretch that out and click it so you can see it. There we are. So you might see questions phrased like that instead. And it's the same thing. Here it says, based on the scenario only, what are the negative indicators of health and safety culture in the organization? Now, what this means is that the course materials are going to have some examples of negative safety culture, sure, but they're not going to get marks unless those things are actually in the scenario. Only things taken from the scenario or inferred from the scenario are going to get marks. So back to the study book. and you can look up some examples of negative indicators, and you've got I mean, there must be like 20 or 30 examples in the study book, loads and loads of these. But they might not be in the scenario, which means that, you know, even though these are negative indicators, but they're not negative indicators based on the scenario only. So you're going to have to read through the scenario carefully and think which ones of these are actually in the scenario. And there may be others in the scenario. There may be other things. There might be other things that are not in the course materials, which are just clearly something wrong in the scenario. Like you might have in the scenario where you've got people laughing at each other, say mocking. Someone's working safely, and then one of the supervisors is laughing at them. And you read your course materials and you go, oh, that's not there. Well, does it seem negative? Does it seem like a negative sign of the culture? Like, yes. Well, write it down then. Write it down, even though it's not in the course materials. So just use your course materials as a bit of revision on the topic, but then look in the scenario to find what the answers could be. Now, I just want to spend a quick moment back on Google to look up the word infer, because I keep talking about inferring. Infer meaning. It means to deduce or conclude something from evidence and reasoning. Whoops. Evidence and reasoning rather than from explicit statements. So it's about clues. There are clues in the scenario, and you have to conclude or deduce something from these clues, from this evidence. And using a bit of reasoning and logic, you have to draw a conclusion rather than from explicit statements. Yeah, so I don't know, you could, for example, let's take a non-safety example. Scientists have looked at the global temperatures of the planet. Look at this temperature, look at that temperature, look at that temperature. And they've looked at the ice cores, and they have concluded that climate change is happening. Yeah? The planet doesn't tell us climate change is happening. It's an inference, it's a conclusion taken from the available data. Conclusion might be wrong, of course, but I'm just saying it's a conclusion drawn from data. If you were to look at statistics on P.E.E. compliance, and let's say you're doing these P.E.E. audits every week, and you've got compliance going up in one area, compliance going up in another area, compliance going up in a third area, but there's another area where compliance is going down. You could conclude from that area needs more support, that area needs stronger management, that area needs more training, more briefings, it needs something, yeah? Maybe the commitment to safety in that area is not as good. So, or it's just data, so you can conclude things. So in a based on a scenario only question, some things will be explicit, some things will not be, and you have to tease it out using brain and some understanding. Let me have a quick look at the questions. So, got a long one here. What's going on with this? My question is, how do we answer theory questions? For example, task 4. Right, yeah, I know this question. Legal reasons for health and safety management. What are the legal reasons for managing health and safety? What are the legal reasons for managing health and safety? Okay, well, that's a theoretical question. So let's go to our course materials. So course materials, where are they? Got them here. All right, this is, where is it? Here we go. National General Certificate. My first port of call. Now, this is a very broad question, by the way. What are the legal reasons for managing health and safety? Well, I know it's in element 1. I know it's going to be in here. It's legal duties. There isn't one section which is going to answer this. There's going to be a number of legal reasons that relate to common law, criminal law, civil law, Health and Safety at Work Act, and maybe the management regs as well. Broadly speaking, I would say something like, have I got a whiteboard or anything I can write on? No, let me bring something up on the screen. Let's get a nice Word document here. Legal reasons off the top of my head, using this. So common law, well, I would say something like, there's a common law duty of care. Is that a reason to manage safety? Yeah, I've got a common law duty of care. You could then give examples of that, of those common law duties. You know, the duty to provide a safe place of work, for example, competent colleagues, safe systems of work, of common law duties. What else? Back to our course materials. Let's carry on the theme of common law. That takes us to civil law. So I will say potential to be sued for civil claim of negligence. I could mention the tort of negligence. This is going to seem like absolute gibberish to international general certificate students. I apologize for this. But this is more of a UK question. So the tort of negligence. You could talk about the neighbour principle. All of this is in your course materials. So far, I've got like 5 things, 10-mark question. We could talk about the statutory duties under Health and Safety at Work Act. You could give some examples of those duties. Duty to ensure the health and safety and welfare of employees, etc. Yeah, so far as is reasonably practical. You could talk about how a breach of that is a criminal offence. You could say that the HSE inspector could what? They could take enforcement action. They could serve improvement notice. They could serve a probation notice. And basically, I'm just working my way through the course because all these sections here talk about this, criminal law. It talks about all this stuff in here. If I go down, we'll eventually get to, oh look, fees for intervention. Fees for intervention. There you go, bang. Verbal advice, written advice. Verbal advice, written advice. Simple caution. Simple caution. Any more? Oh, prosecution, of course, prosecution. And they can also prosecute individuals. Which then leads me on to what? Can we mention maybe gross negligence, manslaughter cases, maybe? Might be stretching it a little bit, but manslaughter. Okay, gross negligence, manslaughter. And I'm pretty sure in here it's going to mention the Corporate Manslaughter Act. There you go. Duties under the Corporate Manslaughter Act. Duties under corporate manslaughter. Slaughter, and what is it? Corporate Manslaughter and Corporate Homicide Act. Corporate manslaughter, yeah, corporate homicide. Yeah, so write out the law in full. Corporate Manslaughter and Corporate Homicide Act of 2007, I think it was. All right, so you can see 10-mark question. I've got more than 10 things there. I could probably add a little bit more to it if I wanted to. That, by the way, that is not an answer. That is an answer plan. That is not my full answer. I'm going to have to take all of these things and write them out in full. Maybe a couple of lines here, a couple of lines there, write it all out in full. And then hopefully that will demonstrate sufficient understanding. You will not get marks for lists. Most of the time, there is no mark available for a list. Right, hope that helps with that. Okay, right, move on. Where was I? Back to here. Let me get rid of the chat. It's in front of me. Okay, so back to this question. Because all we've done so far is just we've talked about the 3 amigos, the 3 types of NEBOSH question. Now we've got this question, based on scenario and a comment on whether the risk assessment is for future algae removal work is suitable and sufficient. So that is a based on the scenario only question, which means that only things from the scenario are going to get marks. There'll be no marks for theory on this, just scenario only. So, bit of a reminder, and this is where I'm going to be brutally honest with you. I apologize if I cause any offense here. I really don't mean to, but I have to tell you the truth on this because it's in your best interests. I said earlier I disagree that NEBOSH ask difficult, unintelligible, hard to understand questions. I don't agree. A key skill you have to develop is reading. and understanding and inference. These are things that we teach at school. I have children at primary and secondary school. They have to learn inference. It's actually really hard. It's really hard to teach kids this. And some kids really struggle. And maybe you're an adult who struggled with this, how to read and how to infer things. Two things you're going to have to get to grips with. You're going to have to understand each word in the question, and that literally does mean you're going to have to use our good friend Google sometimes and just look up what the word means on Google and literally just read every word. Sometimes the word is a topic, and sometimes you're going to have to look up the topic to understand what this topic is if you can't remember what it's about. Now, here's some brutal truths that I'm going to tell you. NEBOSH actually ask questions in plain English. They are a member of the Plain English Association, or the Plain English Society, I think it is. I will be honest with you, I've been looking at NEBOSH exam questions since 2013, well, earlier than that, because I used to be a NEBOSH student myself. There's only ever been one NEBOSH question that I didn't understand. And I was emailing NEBOSH about it this summer, because it came up this summer. And I emailed them and I said, I don't understand this question. What's it after? I have seen hundreds of questions, and I've always been able to understand what it's asking for, because it's just written in plain English. There's only one question that is the exception. And I think one question out of hundreds is actually pretty good. So I'm going to defend, I don't always defend NEBOSH, but I'm going to defend NEBOSH on this. Here's the brutal truth, and I apologize if this upsets you. And this is actually more for the native speakers than it is for the international speakers. So if you're a non-native student, I think you do better with this. Native English speakers, how do I say this without upsetting you? If you do not understand the question, that says more about you than it does the question. I apologize for the brutality of that. It says more about you, and you're either reading it too quickly, you're too stressed, you're not paying attention, maybe you just can't read very well. Maybe it's not even dyslexia or anything like that. Maybe you don't understand the words. I was speaking to a student a couple of months ago about a question, and it used the word collaborate in it. I'm talking through this question with a student, and then I realized halfway through this conversation, he didn't know what the word collaborate means. Oh, well, no wonder you don't understand the question then. So I asked him, what does collaborate mean? And then you just get this embarrassed pause. Bless him. He was embarrassed. Shouldn't be embarrassed. Don't be embarrassed. It's very hard. My children ask me, what does this mean, Daddy? They ask me all the time. I'm like, I have to Google it. Kind of know what it means, but I can't tell you. The other one I got the other day was contrived. What does contrived mean, Dad? Think I know what that means? I'm not quite sure. I had to go look it up. Don't be embarrassed about it. Just go look up a word you don't understand. Look up words you do understand, because you might find you don't actually know what it means. You might find, oh, I know what that means. And when you look it up, it's like, oh, no, it doesn't mean that at all. I thought contrived was the same thing as conceited. Do you know what conceited means? Yeah, well, okay, need to look it up. It's a word that we hear, don't know it. It says more about you than than NEBOSH themselves. So here's a funny meme that I created just to make the point. If anyone says NEBOSH questions are written in NEBOSH speak, smack! If you don't understand the question, you haven't read it properly. There's no NEBOSH speaking questions. I repeat it, there is no NEBOSH speaking questions. Do not come to me and say there's NEBOSH speaking a question. There isn't. They're written in plain English. Or you'll get a gentle, humoristic smack from me. So here on the computer, we've got NEBOSH questions written in plain English, and then there's Jim Carey here going, oh, I don't understand, it makes no sense. It's like, he hasn't read the question properly. That's all it is. Work through it word by word, including the stem, read the stem, use a dictionary, look up the topics if you can't remember what they are. And this is just about attitude, really. But if you don't understand it, take some responsibility for it. Assume it's your problem. Assume it's your issue. Take responsibility for your difficulty. Because I tell you what, on exam day, there's no point blaming NEBOSH and going, oh, on exam day. It's not going to help. The only thing that's going to help is You do what I just said. Read it, use the dictionary, take some responsibility, try and figure it out. Someone's asking, if a question asks, what works well with workers, what does it require? I don't know, because that question is not written in plain English. It's not plain English. I'm sorry. What works well with, what does that mean? What works well? Coffee? Ice cream? Yeah, I need a title, I need a fully written question, I need a stem. That's what I need. If you have an actual exam question which you're thinking of, copy it, paste it, put it in the chat, I'll read it. But that's not a NEBOSH question. That's your shortened version of the NEBOSH question. That's what you remember. But what you remember is not what NEBOSH asked. So, right, let's carry on. So here are two tricky questions that tripped people up in September. Actually, they're not tricky. They're not tricky at all. They're easy questions, but people did not understand them. Comment on the organizational factors that could have contributed to the accidents occurring. Main mistake here is that people just ignored that. They just ignored it, and they wrote about individual factors and job factors. I don't know why. Maybe they just didn't understand what the difference between the different types of factors, because there are differences between individual, job, and organizational factors. Or maybe they just read it too quickly and they just missed it. Like they just deleted it in their brain and they just thought, human factors. I'll tell the examiner about all of the different human factors. So that's the first mistake. The second mistake is that a lot of the organizational factors they wrote down were just completely generic. Whereas the rest of the question says that could have contributed to the accidents occurring. Now, another word could kind of gives you a bit of room to include things which are not completely certain. But some people were just copying generic random organizational factors from the course materials that have nothing to do with the accidents in this particular scenario. And their explanations were vague and generic. You have to link the organizational factor to why it caused these accidents. You have to try to do that in some way. And so just generic organizational factors are not going to get a mark. The other question which tripped people up was this one about administrative control measures. Thankfully, most people seem to have spotted administrative. That was good. I've read loads of answers and they all seem to be mostly administrative. What they did miss was this. I saw a few people who just wrote out a massive list of training, where it clearly says a detailed list of specific types of training is not required. Not is in bold. Like, they're really trying to signpost you towards this. But people write down 10 different types of training. Well, clearly the question says it's not asking for that. A similar mistake to the other answer was generic administrative control measures, where again, it's like, what could the organization put in place to help avoid a repeat of the shop accident? Which accident? The shop accident. Not the warehouse accident, the shop accident. People started to talk about the warehouse accident. Oh, they need to be trained in the use of a ladder. Well, that's in the warehouse, not the shop. The shop had nothing to do with a ladder. It had everything to do with ceiling tiles and rain and customers. Training people in how to change batteries and smoke detectors have got nothing to do with it. It was about the shop accident, so that was missed. And then just lots and lots of generic stuff in there. Like they wrote down permit to work system. That is an administrative procedure, yes. It's got nothing to do with the shop accident. It's a generic thing they found from the course materials. So again, you've got to answer the question. Don't answer a different question. Answer this one you've got in front of you. Someone's asking a brilliant question. Would you be flagged for using AI for helping explain the points you made from your answer plan? Yes. Yes. Yes, you would be flagged for that. Do not use AI under any circumstances for any purpose. Not even researching your answer plan. Don't use it for anything. Don't use Copilot for anything. Nothing. You've been warned. You will probably get reported. Even if you get away with it, it's going to delay your exam results. You might end up getting banned for it. So do not use it under any circumstances. Right, where are we? We've done the big one, which is step 5. It's the most important step, step 5. Read that question super carefully. Now we're going to look at scenarios. Now this step is somewhat optional because it does depend on the question. If you've got a theory only question, when I say theory only, it's like one of those where there's no reference to the scenario, no stem, nothing. You could just kind of skip this. That's fine. But most questions will require some use of the scenario. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to, once you've read the question and you've read it very, very carefully, I then want you to go to your scenario and read it super carefully and highlight the key points and key evidence along the way. So you've read this question and you've probably done a little bit of research while reading it. You know, what does suitable and sufficient mean? And you may even have looked up HSG 65 and found the actual document. And so with all that in mind, you're going to go to your scenario and start to highlight things and make some notes. So I've got an example here. This is how we might do it. So here's the scenario. And notice I've highlighted things. And it's all for this question. And let's just bring up, by the way, the definition. So here's like the definition of suitable and sufficient. Proper check, asked who might be affected, dealt with all the obvious significant risks, precautions are reasonable, risk is low, involve the workers, involve the reps. I've highlighted things which I think are kind of relevant, are going to help me answer. And I might make some notes along the way. How do I make notes? Well, I could just kind of just type some notes in here. I might say here, the RA, hang on, let me make it bold so I can see it. The RA must consider chemical exposure and have precautions for this. I might write down something here. I'll say need precautions for lone working. Why am I writing that down? Because it says in here, you dealt with all the obvious significant risks. So the risk assessment they're doing must consider lone working and chemical exposure. And what else? And also now it says slips, trips, and falls. Also consider slips and trips. And what have we got here? Here it talks about a meeting with the GM, maintenance worker, and a few workers. Ah, that's interesting because here it says you involved your workers or their reps in the process. Okay. All right. So I'll say involve the workers who do the job. And that's a good thing. That's a very positive thing. Conduct a thorough risk assessment for the algae removal work. Okay, great. A proper check was made. They're doing a thorough risk assessment. Want to do a thorough risk assessment. Now I'm reading all of this, and what I see is that we have a meeting and meeting again, and there's actually no mention here at all about visiting the site of work, because if we go back to our course materials, you know, it does talk about here. If you look at that there, you visited the location, you looked, you made inquiries, you put some effort into it. It wasn't just a desktop paper exercise. Well, I've got a problem here because this looks to me in this scenario, looks to me like they're just doing a desktop exercise. So I might write down here somewhere. Let me just make a desktop exercise. Did not visit the site of work. So I'm just making notes as I go through it. And you can make notes on your scenario if you want to, or you can actually just make notes in the answer sheet directly. So if you've got a box to type in, just start to make your notes in there if you want to. That might be the beginning of your answer plan. Yes, let me show you how that works. And I don't have the answer sheet for this one, but let's just imagine that this answer here was about this question. I could just start to put some bullet points in, say exercise. No visit of site of work. Did not consider chemical exposure or lone working. Did consider slippery boots Slips and trips. If I go back to my definition here, it says you asked who might be affected. So we have to consider what types of people might be affected by the risk. Well, if I read my scenario, what I find is that they're just focusing on the maintenance people. They're just focusing on the workers. But there are actually a load of members of the public in this area, customers, and maybe contractors too. So I could write down, did not consider customers, visitors, contractors who are affected. And so that's my general approach of going through the scenario, just making some notes, highlighting things and so on to help me get ready to answer this question. And that is step 6. Read the scenario again, highlight points and evidence. I then turned that into an answer plan. That's step 7. And crucially here, we want more points than there are marks available. So try and get lots down. This is, how many marks is it? Oh, 12 marks. I'm going to try to get a minimum of 12 things, but really I want 15, 20 things. That would be good. So I'm going to create some kind of list like this. Very, very short answers. It starts to look like this. Very, very short answers. They're not well explained. There's not a lot of evidence in there. Here's an example. There's a real question there. You try to inform the director that the root causes of unsafe behavior are usually management failures. Based on the scenario only, what management failures are likely to have contributed to this accident? Which accident? This accident. And this is my answer plan. It's a 10-mark question. I've written 14 things. And here's a cool tip, by the way. Try using numbered bullet points. Numbered bullet points save you from having to count how many things you've written. Just number them. That's a plan. That's not an answer. You probably will not get marks for this. It's too short. Doesn't show a lot of understanding. The answer plan should include the points that you want to make, so things you want to say that directly answer the question. So this management failure, that management failure, and so on. And it should also include any relevant information from the scenario that supports your answer. So this management failure contributed to this accident because, and this management failure contributed to the accident because this thing happened in the scenario and that thing happened in the scenario. And you might get marks for both. You get marks for points, you get marks for supporting evidence. It all depends on the marking scheme. Here are your exam instructions. So the exam instructions say you will get a mark. Generally, a mark is given for each correct technical point that is clearly demonstrated. So you get a mark for the points that you make. That's useful. And the point has to be correct as well. So it has to be on the marking scheme. And it has to be clearly demonstrated, which means you have to explain it a bit. You have to show that you understand it. It has to be clear, it has to be specific. You can't just half make the point. You can't say something similar to the point. Sometimes people say something that's nearly there, but not quite. Not quite there. So it says then, single word answers or lists. Lists like what? Like that. That's a list. It's not a single word list. It doesn't say just like fines, insurance, premiums, sick pay, first aid. It's not that kind of list. These are very short sentences, but still it doesn't really demonstrate a lot of understanding. These are unlikely to gain marks as it would not normally be enough to show understanding or a connection with the scenario. So there are two things you should really aim to do really. Demonstrate understanding, so explain yourself enough to show your understanding, and or, depending on the question, a connection with the scenario. Some questions demand a connection to the scenario. Others don't. Based on the scenario, it has to be connected to the scenario by nature. Your answer must be based on the scenario only. Other questions say, support your answer with relevant information where applicable. Even that requires a connection to the scenario to get marks. And the way to do that often is by using the P principle. You make your point, you explain your point, and then support it with evidence. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Most of the time, you will get marks for the points and only the points. But on sometimes, you will also get marks for evidence as well. So make sure you include in your answer supporting evidence to support the points that you are making. Now, when I say support your point, let me give you an example. People are like, what are you talking about, Will? I don't understand. Well, back to the budget today. Okay, so let's say I were to ask you a question, which is comments on the budget today. One of the points you could make is that it's going to make life more expensive for people. Yeah, it's just a point. What you could then do is use evidence from the budget to prove what you just said. Oh, it's going to make life more expensive for people because they are putting up the price of milk products or electric car mileage or whatever tax you want to mention. Here's the point I want to make. It's making things more expensive. Here's my evidence to prove my point. Back to the climate change analogy. Not a big fan of climate change, by the way. No, don't think anyone is, but it's like the world's getting warmer. My evidence? Here's all the data evidence for the past however many years. Comment on whether you think the remake of Total Recall is any good. I've not seen it, by the way, so I can't say, but I haven't got any evidence then, have I? It's not very good. Why? Well, in the original, they went to Mars, and in this new one, they don't go to Mars at all. It's a completely different story to the original one. Yeah, so it's about explaining, using some evidence of why you're making that point. That's all it is. This, by the way, this is not a NEBOSH technique. This is just basic communication skills. Like I'll be honest, I don't think you can be a safety professional if you can't do this. I honestly don't think you're going to be very good at any job in management if you can't naturally make a point, explain your point, and back it up with evidence. It's just persuasion. If the boss asks you a question and you give an answer, the boss is going to say, what makes you say that? Why do you think that? What's your evidence? What's your data? Give me some facts. That's all it is. So this is it's not about NEBOSH at all. So don't get hung up on the P principle being the NEBOSH thing. It's really not. All right, let's carry on. So here are some examples of things not to do. Lists without connection to the scenario will rarely get marks. So here's a HASAWA question. It's a legal question. Comment on the breaches of the general duties under Section 2 by the employer. And they've given this list: breach of 2.1, breach of safe place of work, breach of safe environment. The issue there is it's not mark-worthy by itself. First, it doesn't explain anything. It has no connection to the scenario. It doesn't actually tell us what's going on, which is breaching those duties. I see that a lot. I also see this kind of answer a lot as well. This is not a list, but this is just repeating the scenario without actually answering the question. If you read the question, it says comment on the breaches of general duties under Section 2 of the Health and Safety at Work Act. It's a HASAWA question. It's a law question. And here they say, well, there are lots of trip accidents. People are not reporting incidents. They've given up reporting. Managers never do anything. Not taking responsibility. Bullying is a culture very negative. They're repeating stuff from the scenario. They're even actually making some comments about things in the scenario. Does this have any link to HASAWA? No. Where are the duties? There are no duties here. Without duties, without a reference to HASAWA, without saying this problem here is a breach of this duty. For example, the employer has breached the duty to provide a safe place of work so far as is reasonably practicable because there are lots of trip accidents happening in the workplace. That'll get a mark. I'm not quite sure what these will. Well, no, these won't get a mark, I don't think, for anything. They're not Section 2 breaches. So you have to connect it to Hassoa. Sometimes relevant information gets a mark. So here's a question on first aid. What should be considered when deciding on the suitability of first aid arrangements for the organization? And let's say on your answer plan, you've written distance from emergency services, and scenario says they're 10 miles from the closest medical center. So that's your plan. That's not an answer, by the way. That's your plan. No marks for that. You would then write in. So for those of you asking, how would I write an answer, Will? Well, here's an example. I took that and I made it like that. It's a one paragraph. The further away the organization is from the emergency services, the more first aid provision, training and equipment will be needed to keep casualties alive. The factory is 10 miles from the closest hospital, which is a long way, so additional first aid provision is needed. Done. And that will get 2 marks. Why? Because there are 2 things on the marking scheme there. So you've demonstrated your understanding of how distance from the emergency services affects the first aid provision, and then you've chucked in a bit of relevant information, and that got you an extra mark because you used that evidence there to support the point you made there. That shows really good understanding. So 2 marks in one answer. Now, when compiling all the information for your answer plan, you've got different sources of information, which we have already discussed. So you've got your course materials, you've got Google and the internet, and you've got the scenario. All of those put together gives you an answer plan. Now, for the question we've been looking at, which is about suitable and sufficient risk assessments, HSG 65, you would literally just Google HSG 65 and look it up, and you'll get HSG 65. You can actually see the 3 amigos here. You can see the 3 different types of question. Amigo number 1, that was the theory question. Steve Martin's the theory question. You will answer your theory questions by looking up the course materials on Google. Someone asked in the chat earlier, I didn't actually hear and understand clearly how to answer theory questions. Do we use the P method, or we just search on Google and change the words into my own words? Yeah, you don't need the P principle to answer a theory question, because the P principle is point, evidence, explanation. There's no evidence on a theory question. It's got nothing to do with a scenario. So make a point, explain your point if required. It depends on the question. Just answer the question. That's all. Don't worry about the P principle. Just answer the question. But you answer the question based on what you find in your course materials and what you find on Google. Very, very simple. Very few questions are like that, though. You might only get 1 in the whole exam. Most questions are going to be something to do with a mixture of theory and scenario. So this guy here, is it Chevy Chase? He belongs in both. This is one of those questions where it says, support your answer with relevant information where applicable. So there might be a bit of theory, get a bit of theory from here, and that can go on your answer plan. And there might be some really cool things from the scenario that can also go on your answer plan too. So like Chevy Chase is just everywhere on this. And then the final type of question is, oh, what's his name again? I can't remember now. Brilliant actor though. It's just based on the scenario only. So only things from the scenario are going to go onto this answer plan. So the 3 amigos come back here. So your answer plan can include the points you want to make and the relevant information from your scenario. Back to this question then. So we've got the algae work, which was basically compare the risk assessment for the algae removal work versus what it says in HSG 65. And let me remind you at this point that earlier we said, read the question, and now we want to answer the question. Very common mistakes to avoid here. I'll let you guess what the F stands for once again. An example of not answering the something question is maybe a discussion about why the algae removal job was unsafe. No marks for that. Why? Doesn't answer the question. Sometimes people talk about the previous risk assessment. Doesn't answer the question. This question is about the future algae removal work. People will waffle on about making recommendations. Oh, we need to do this and we need to do that. This question is asking you to comment on whether the risk assessment for the future algae removal work is suitable and sufficient. That's all that's going to get marks. That's it. That's it. Comments on whether it's suitable and sufficient, not on how to make it safe. Some people will talk about the culture. They'll talk about law. Oh man, the law. Oh, law. Oh, it's a breach of this and it's a breach of that. Oh, breach of HASUA. Oh, and they've got a legal... No one cares. No one cares about your silly legal breaches. The only time we care about your silly legal breaches is on a legal breach question. That's it. Is it a question about legal breaches? If so, give legal breaches, lots of them, make them really good. But if it's not about legal breaches, I don't want to hear it. There might be on some questions, occasionally, 1 mark for mentioning a legal breach. Occasionally. The vast majority of questions, you'll get no marks for talking about HASUA or management regs or ILO C155 if you're an international student. It's just not relevant. It's a very small part of the course, the law. So, don't basically read the question and then answer that question. Don't answer a different question. Don't know if any of you are married, yeah? All right, listen, I'm not being sexist. I'm not being sexist. That's never a good way to start an anecdote, is it? I'm married, got a wife. I love my wife, love her dearly, love her more than most things in the world. I ask her a question like, what's the plan for this weekend? Simple question, yeah? What's the plan for this weekend? What are we doing this weekend? And then she says, well, Sonia rang me and Sonia's up to this thing here and she was going to do this, but she had an argument with her husband. And so then I thought that there's this other thing going on, but it turns out that so-and-so is like, what I asked you was, what's the plan for this weekend? I don't need Sonia's back story. I don't need to hear about how she's had an argument with her husband or how someone else's plans were cancelled. Don't care. None of that's relevant to my question. You can tell I'm an NEBOSH examiner, or I used to be at least. I just want an answer to my freaking question. That's all. That's all examiners want. The question's been asked. They've got a marking scheme. They only want to see you talking about the stuff that's on the marking scheme. Now, of course, you don't know what's on the marking scheme. You have to figure it out. But don't go talking about something that is definitely not on the marking scheme because it's a completely different topic. Point made? Point made. Just so you know, just saying clever things that are correct doesn't necessarily answer the question. Doesn't matter if it's right. Doesn't matter if it shows great understanding of a different question. You need to answer this question. Anyway. Risk assessment. Back to where are we now? Where are we? I think we've done step 7. We've done step 7. So someone says, bless you, I feel for you on this one. Don't know about everyone else, but there is so much missing information from my course provider. I'm stressed about the 10th of December. I'm very sorry to hear that. I don't know if that's true or not, but because I don't know who your course provider is. But I would suggest if there's stuff missing from your course provider's course materials, in your opinion, then feel free to sign up for the Compassa course materials. They're not very expensive, what they are. Someone's asking, if I number my answers, is it possible to get 2 marks for 1 bullet point? Yes. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah. So, all right. Let me put this on the screen. So here's an answer plan. Yeah, we're going to start to write this as an answer. Now let's just get rid of the bullet point, shall we? Let's just get rid of that. And let's start to write this all out as one answer. And let's jumble it all up a little bit and see what happens. You see, the examiner isn't going to give you marks because you put things in bullet points. It's just helpful to you and it's helpful to the examiner. That's all. But it's not a condition of getting marks. So if you were to say this was a desktop exercise, no visit to the site of work, no visit to the a risk assessment requires a proper check, which implies they need to visit the area where the work is taking place. All right, now normally I would just bullet point that, but you could just write this. Also, the risk assessment only covered slips and trips and emergency first aid procedures. It did not cover the risk of chemical exposure, which is a significant risk because the accident caused a rash. A suitable and sufficient risk assessment must cover all significant risks. Also, the lone working was not addressed either. Now, that's just one big fat mess, isn't it? It's a big fat mess. But the examiner will mark that. They will definitely mark that. And so they'll get some red ticks here. And, you know, it's all subject to the marking scheme. But it'll say, right, on the marking scheme, yeah, desktop exercise, no visit to the site, proper check, visit the area. Yeah, great, bang, there's a tick there. They haven't covered all of the significant risks. Yeah, it's got to cover the significant risks. And on my marking scheme, I've got two examples. I've got the chemicals and the lone working. Bang and bang. There you go. I've written one paragraph. I've got 4 marks. How you structure the answer doesn't really matter. How you structure it doesn't really matter. However, in terms of marking, the examiner will mark whatever you write, no matter how badly structured it is. But it's good for you to put things in bullet points, because then you can see whether you've written enough. Most answers need a full sentence or maybe 2 lines, maybe 3 lines, depending on how many examples you're giving. Yeah, so if you've written like half a line, you can look at it and go, I haven't written a lot for that one. I need to write a bit more for that one, I think. I haven't really written much at all. I need to explain that a bit more. But if you've written like 3 lines, you look at it and you go, I've written a lot for that one. Yeah, that's why I say put them in paragraphs. And then I number the paragraphs. The only reason why I number them is so I don't have to count them. If I'm writing 25 points, I don't want to have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, blah, 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 blah. I don't want to count them. I just want to go, oh, there's 24. That's it. But you don't have to do that, just to be clear. Someone saying, I'm studying with Astutis. I know Astutis. I'm good friends with Astutis. I like them very much. I benefit more from your videos in this webinar. I'll be purchasing your study books. Well, that's very, very kind of you. I know there are differences between our courses and the Astutis courses. Everyone has their own style. I'm very happy that we are serving you well. All right, let me have a look at the questions. I will answer a question if it's relevant to what we're talking about. I can see people are putting in, can we change our fonts? Right, guys, why are you stressing about fonts? Can we change our font? Must we follow the font? Why are you stressing about the fonts? Seriously, people ask them sometimes the strangest questions. They really do. I'm sorry if I'm being patronizing. You get marks for what you write. You're not getting marks on your English, your grammar, your presentation, the fonts, bullet points. Listen, guys and gals, NEBOSH are not out to get you on some technicality. NEBOSH are good people who want you to pass, and they will pass if you meet the criteria, which is the marking scheme. And if you demonstrate your understanding of the marking scheme, you pass. I have seen people, I've seen people literally not even use the answer sheet. Let me show you what I mean. And I say this to reassure you, not to make fun of you. Maybe I'm getting tired. I think I'm coming across as a bit arrogant and patronizing now, so I think apologies are in order. But you see this answer sheet. I've seen people not use this, and they've actually gone and used Notepad instead. And so Notepad, you know, Notepad, I've even got an, or they've just like a blank sheet. Yeah, they've just like typed 1 on there, and then they've just typed their answer. Yeah, That is accepted. They will mark it. Is it ideal? No, it's not ideal, of course. Technical things which could lose you marks. Yes, all right, I'll give you some things, or at least one that I can think of. I saw someone recently who, when they exported their answer sheet to PDF, because you have to save the answer, for some reason that I don't know, it chopped off the bottom of the answer. So the full text, like there was a load of the answer that just kind of disappeared in the box, and we couldn't see it. Listen, the examiner will only mark what they can see. They can only mark what they can read. So if you've got a formatting issue on your PDF document, yeah, that might be an issue. So always check your PDF document. Make sure that everything's there, and make sure it's legible. One more thing that might cost you marks. If you put the wrong answer in the box, so again, I'll show you the answer sheet. So if you accidentally put the answer to question 3 in the box for question 2, that will cost you marks, because the examiner is not allowed to guess or assume that you've made a mistake. The examiner will mark question 2 based on what you've written in question 2 box, and they'll mark it against the question 2 marking scheme. So please do not put the wrong information in the wrong box. So things like that will cost you marks, but things like fonts, bullet points, colors, no, it's okay. It's okay. You're all good. Right. Step 8, which is, I guess, a big one as well, one which stresses a lot of people out. It's writing your full answer. So this is kind of what I expect it to look like at the end. Can you see here we've got a list? Yeah, that's the plan. We've got 18 things on the plan, and then we've written it out as a full answer. I've ended up with 16 things because some things have kind of been joined together. And well, that's kind of what I expect it to look like. That's the answer plan written out in full. Now, does every question require that? No, there are the occasional questions which can be answered with just a list. You do get some like that, and they're usually quite obvious. But most questions will require, a couple of lines per answer. To demonstrate your understanding. However, just to be clear, NEBOSH are not marking you based on how many words you write. Yeah, so just go back to the bullet points and the fonts and all that stuff. No NEBOSH examiner is counting your words and going, you must write a minimum of 25 words to get that mark. No. No NEBOSH examiner is doing the opposite, where they're counting to make sure you don't write too much. No NEBOSH examiner saying, you wrote more than 40 words, therefore I'm not giving you that mark. No NEBOSH examiner ever said that. So don't stress too much about that. Just read the question, answer the question, make sure you explain yourself, and throw in supporting evidence where relevant. Don't just chuck in random things. Don't just repeat the whole scenario. Repeating the scenario where it's not relevant is not going to get you marks. But just backing up what you're saying with some evidence will hopefully help you. So that's what a good answer looks like. Now, P. Let's go on to P very briefly. So this is Pee-wee Herman, if you remember that silly movie. P stands for point, evidence, and explanation. Now, this used to be in the NEBOSH guidance. They used to recommend it as a technique. But then they took it out quite quickly afterwards because lots of people just misunderstood it. And they thought that it was like a mandatory requirement. And they had lots of people using it very badly. Let me try and explain how this works and how to use it and how not to use it. So back to your exam instructions. You will get a mark for each correct technical point that is clearly demonstrated. So you're getting marks for points. But the points have to be correct, as in they're on the marking scheme. They also have to be clearly demonstrated, which means that they have to be explained and perhaps even supported by some evidence, if need be, if there is evidence to support it. There might not be any evidence. in a scenario, in which case do not mention any evidence. If there is no evidence, I see a lot of people trying to force evidence from the scenario into an answer, and I'm like, that evidence has absolutely nothing to do with what you're talking about there. But they're like, but I've got to put evidence in or I won't get the mark. I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't. You don't have to put evidence in to get the mark. Just make your point and demonstrate your point. And if there is some evidence you can use to prove that point is true, put it in. You might get an extra mark. You might get 2 marks for one answer. Wouldn't that be beautiful? But don't force it in where it's inappropriate. So here's a little bit of an answer, just to show you kind of how the P principle might work here. So here we've got a point. The OM, the operations manager, did not specifically check the contractor had previous experience of working with warehouse conveyors. That's the point. They did not check the contractor's experience. Here's the evidence. Instead, the OM seemed to believe the contractor when they confidently said they could do it. So the evidence is the OM just believed the contractor when the contractor said, oh yeah, I can do that. I can do it. And the OM just believed it. So that's my evidence. Can you see how there's like a connection there with the scenario? I'm mentioning the conveyors, I'm mentioning the OM, I'm mentioning the contractor. You can see there's a very strong link to the scenario here. There's a connection to the scenario. And then there's a little bit of an extra explanation. Had the contractor had similar experience, they might have fitted the fan properly. That's a very strict point evidence explanation type answer. That answer will get 1 mark depending on the marking scheme. It could get 2, but usually 1 mark for that. Now, to be clear though, what if I told you you don't have to use the P principle? It is not a requirement of NEBOSH that you use the P principle. So we can throw it into the same category as fonts and bullet points and colors and grammar and things like that. This is optional, completely optional, and it's only there to help you. It's only there to help you, that's all. NEBOSH are not ticking boxes here. They don't need you to answer like this. I've seen people answer questions like this in a very contrived way, to use that word again. They write down the point, write down the evidence, write down the explanation with these headings. Like they literally put the headings in because they've watched one of my videos and they've completely misunderstood it. That's perhaps my fault as much as it is theirs. Perhaps I didn't explain it very well. But you don't need to do that. The examiner, no examiner is going, right, have we got a point? Yes, we've got a point. Have we got the supporting evidence? Yes. Have we got a supporting explanation, which is at least 10 words? Yes, we do. We have all 3. Therefore, I can give a point for that. No examiner ever said that. The examiner will just look at what you've written, and then we'll compare it to the marking scheme, and then we'll decide whether you have clearly demonstrated the point or not. Some people really do overthink the P principle. They'll ask questions like, can I use the same evidence twice? If I've used it to support this point and I'm going to use it to support another point, will I get marked down for that? Like, just stop overthinking the damn P principle and just answer the question. So there are people who overthink this and they get so focused on the P principle. I just say to them, just forget the P principle. It's obviously causing you some problems. Just focus on answering the question. Because if you're worried about, oh, do I have to use the answer twice? Do I have to tell them what the point is? You are overthinking it. It's just a communication style. Just a communication style. To me, it comes naturally. To most people, it comes naturally. But for some people who struggle to write, they struggle to get their answers on paper, it can be helpful. If you're overthinking it, you probably don't need it. So just focus on answering the question. A NEBOSH exam is not jumping through hoops of fire, trying not to get burnt. We're not ticking boxes. Here's what some guidance says. It just talks about a connection with the scenario, really. You do not need to link every point to the scenario. So where there's a theoretical point and it has little or nothing to do with the scenario, don't force a link to the scenario into what you're saying. But the answer as a whole should be connected to the scenario. So if the question says support your answer with evidence. That means you really should have evidence from the, you should be talking about the scenario in your answer. If you have a very, very generic answer to a scenario-based question, you've got a problem. A generic answer to a generic theoretical question, fine. You're absolutely fine. So if it's a question which has no link to the scenario, no evidence required, you're fine. Theoretical question, theoretical answer. But if it's a question which says use evidence based on the scenario only, we expect to see connection with the scenario as a whole. But don't think that every single bullet point, every single paragraph has to have evidence forced into it. It might not be relevant to to what you're saying. All right, I've made my point there. So the key lesson in all of this is, if you could just answer the question, that would be great. And here's one of my favorite memes. This is a NEBOSH learner getting distracted by the P.E.E principle, and the NEBOSH question is just horrified. Just answer the question. Focus on the question. The P.E.E principle is just a communication technique to help you answer. It is not a mandatory structure to get answers on a question. So just answer the question. Make your points, explain your points sufficiently. How much you have to explain really just does depend on the question. Some questions ask you for reasons, they ask you for arguments, they ask you for justification. That will require more of an explanation. Some questions just ask you for very, very short, simple things, and they just require less of an explanation. And support your answer with the scenario as appropriate. So there's that answer. That's what a good answer looks like again. Notice how all we've got is just 2 to 3 lines per point made. 2 lines, 2 lines, 2 lines, 2 and a bit lines, 2 and a bit, 2, 2 again, 2 and a bit. Can you just see there's like a pattern there? Yeah, you don't really need to do more than that. You don't need to do more than that per point made. Now, if you want to join all of those things up into like one big paragraph, that's okay too. NEBOSH are not going to penalize you for putting things in paragraphs. If you want to take 3 bullet points and put them into 1 bullet point, that's okay. The examiner will mark the whole thing, and there might be, if you have a really big bullet point, there might be 5 marks in there. Who knows? So they're not trying to catch you out with your structure at all. These are just recommendations that help people do really well. Now, what about the word count? Someone asked me about this earlier. I gave you a very short answer. What about the word count? That's not a NEBOSH examiner, by the way, just to be clear. NEBOSH examiners are much more attractive than that. Right, here, there is some guidance. Now, the guidance is confusing. So this is on the NEBOSH website, and it's called the Certificate Scenario-Based Assessment Guide. And in there, it says your overall word count must be no more than plus 10% of the recommended word count. So it says must, but then it says recommended. And then it says recommended again. So what is it? Is it a must or is it a recommendation? Which one is it? Well, I can tell you it's a recommendation. I'll tell you why in a moment. But I think what we need to take from this is this paragraph here, which I think we need to follow the intent of this. We need to follow the spirit of this rule. That word count is there to help you focus on the subject and the context, and to avoid digression into areas that are not mark-worthy. They want you to stick to the point. So to be clear what I said earlier, I said don't just write down any nonsense you want on your sheet. Stick to the point. Answer this question. If you think it could be mark-worthy or should be mark-worthy, write it down. If you know it's not mark-worthy, if you've now just resorted to just chucking stuff at the wall, hoping some of it will stick, you don't really want to write that down. I'll be honest, if you start to hit like 7,000, 8,000 words of utter nonsense, the examiner is going to find it very, very hard to find the marks. It's like buried treasure. Like they're searching for it, but there's just so much information, they can't see the marks. So if you write down too much and it's all just a big jumbled mess, the examiner might miss some of the marks, even though they try their best. So, don't write unnecessary things. Now, many course providers will instruct you based on this. They'll say, do not exceed 3,300 words. Well, listen, all I can say is that Compassa students on average write about 5,000 words, and we have an 88% pass rate right now. So I use this as my rule. This is from the exam paper. So when you get your exam paper, it should say this on the first page. Read what it says. You are not expected to. It means you can. Read it carefully. It doesn't say you cannot write more than 3,000 words. It just says you're not expected to. It's setting an expectation. It's saying all you need to write is about 3,000 words. You can pass this in about 3,000 words. You do not have to write more than 3,000 words. It's trying to manage the amount of content so that you don't think dumping large amounts of data is going to get you through the exam. But you can exceed it. You can do. And you know, this is taken from one of my students who passed 5,700 words. They passed. So there's no penalty for it. And we've got an 88% pass rate. Now, perhaps one day NEBOSH will change that rule. Perhaps. In that case, I will change all my advice. So read the instructions. If it says you are not expected to, you're good. If it says you must not, then don't. Then don't. Simple as that. And stick to the point, really. So there. Just to remind you, writing too much irrelevant waffle will make it hard for the examiner to find the marks. Right, there we are. We've managed to get through that big bit there. Let's just spend a little bit of time just going through this very quickly. So we're nearing the end of our webinar now. The next step is to repeat it again and again and again. You're going to repeat that 5, 6, 7, 8 process on the next easiest question. And then the third easiest and the fourth easiest, and we work your way down to the hardest question, the one you're dreading, the one you've left to the end. By the time you get to that last question, you've probably read the scenario about 10 times. Maybe you'll be able to answer that question now that you've read the scenario 10 times, who knows? And then once you've finished it, go to bed on a Wednesday evening, Wednesday afternoon, or whatever it is when your exam finishes. It depends where you are in the world, to be fair. The exam opens and closes at 11 a.m. UK time. But if you're in Canada or Australia or India, then it will be at a different time, of course. So don't submit it. Go to sleep, get some rest. Next day, Groundhog Day. Next day, get up again. Try and get up early. Go through your answers. Read those questions again. Make sure you're answering the question. And fill in the final details on the answer sheet. So you'll need to put down your name, your NEBOSH number. You'll need to fill in the word counts, the references and the sources. And then save that document as a PDF. So to do that, you just simply click Save As, choose the file type, PDF, and then you'll be able to upload it. Make sure you upload before the deadline, not after the deadline. The deadline is 11 o'clock UK time. Make sure you try and upload it around about 10 o'clock UK time. Just in case, I've known people to have Wi-Fi problems last minute. Their internet crashes, they have a computer crash, they've lost their login details from the last minute panic. You don't want that. Try and submit it a good hour before if you can. That would be very, very good. Simple little bit of advice as well. I've known a few people who finished their exam and then their computer crashed and they hadn't saved it and they couldn't recover the file. That's a nightmare. Remember to save and save often, or turn on your autosave. Save and save often. And remember, final tip is stick to the plan. Stick to the plan. What plan? This plan. Stick to this plan. So make sure you set that time limit. Make sure you start with the easiest question. Read that question super carefully. Even if you hate the question, even if the question is really hard, you don't understand it, it's scaring you, just go for it word by word, working out like a riddle. What does this question mean? And once you've done that, you should have a fairly good idea as to what the question's after and what it is not after. Once you've done that, if it's a scenario type question, go through the scenario, make the best possible use of it, and get some notes onto an answer plan, and then take your answer plan and write out full answers, with or without the P principle as you see fit. Just make sure that you are answering that question and not a different question. What I like to do when I'm answering a question, I often, as I'm writing it, I'll end up kind of going, hang on, am I answering the question? And then I go and read the question again. I go, what was the question again? Oh, right, that's the question, right. Carry on my answer. Sometimes you can be typing and you just go, off track. I was like, whoa, 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 easy, Tiger, easy. All right, let's go back to the question. Ah, that's what it is, right. Stay on track, always stay on track. And then once you've done all of that, make sure you submit. Where can you get more help? Yeah, that's what Arnold was asking in Predator. Where can I get more help? All he had was mud and sticks. Well, you can get more help by going into all our free resources. Remember, you've got your NEBOSH guidance, you've got your YouTube channel, you've got the PDF I'm going to send you. Well, that should be automated. That should go out today or tomorrow, I think. YouTube channel, loads of stuff on the YouTube channel. And then you've got the paid resources again. You can find all of that on our website if you want to. As you can see, the prices fairly low, some of them. You know, prices for some of the study books pretty low. And you've got the rescue pack. If you really need some big help, if you want tutor support, mock exam stuff, and so on, rescue pack. For those of you who are really, really struggling. We specialize in rescuing students. Anyway, I think that's pretty much all I've got to say. I'm going to take a look at some of the questions now and see if there are any questions that I can answer. Feel free to chuck some more questions in the chat, by the way. Happily do that. So we've got someone asking, what is the positive aspects of approach to auditing in this company? Okay, so common question. Comment on what was positive about the approach to auditing in this organization. Right, very easy question, super easy. So what you do with that is you are going to go to your course materials, which are, say, here, and you're going to go to the auditing section. So let's go to the table of contents. You go to element 4, auditing's down here, health and safety auditing, there we are. So you've got a load of information here about audits. And in particular, when the question's asking you what was good about the audit process, what was positive, you want to look at the bit about the audit process. So we'll scroll down until we get to the audit, right, so audit stages. So this is the audit process. Starts here, go down, we've got some pre-audit prep, competence of the auditor, time, resources, information gathering, information analysis, the audit report. Right, so you got a load of stuff there. Right. So then what do? You look at what your scenario says about the audit, and you look for everything good that they do in the scenario in relation to the audit. So what does a good audit look like? Well, look at your course materials. Your course materials say this is how you do an audit. You need a competent auditor. You need to consider the scope of the audit. You need a standard to audit against. You need to gather information first, get some policies, get some documents. You have to book some interviews, interview a range of different people. Yeah, visit the site, do a tour of the site. You're going to have a scoring system. You're going to have a report at the end with recommendations. All of that. All that's explained in your course materials. Look at the scenario and see which of those things they're doing, and then just talk about the positives. I've seen that question where it says talk about the positives, talk about the negatives. 2 different questions. Great, easy. Here are the positives, here are the negatives. It's a very, very easy question. That's not a theory question. You're going to have to take the theory and compare it to the scenario. Next one. I already answered that one. Right, what's this one here? Remember, I got this question during my fire certificate. Okay, I don't deliver the fire certificates yet, but we'll have a look at this. Hot work permit arrangements. What did the operator do well with the hot work permit arrangements? No, you should support your answer. Blah, 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 blah. Well, what could the operator have done better with the hot work permit arrangements? Okay, so 2 questions. What's positive? What's negative? It's very simple. Go to your course materials. Have a look at the section on hot work permits, how an operator should carry out a hot work permit, do a hot work permit, Yeah, so it's like identify the fire hazards, clear the fuels away, control the ignition sources, get a fire blanket, get a curtain, yeah, all of that stuff. Get a fire extinguisher and a fire watcher. Yeah, all that stuff it tells you in the course materials. Read your scenario and say, right, which of those things did they do? And if they did them, and if they did them really well, great, that's your positive. Question B, what could they do better? Which of those things did they not do? Or which of those things did they try to do but didn't do very well? That's your answer to question B. You're just comparing your course materials with the scenario. Next question. Oh, same question, repeated. So, do I suggest that you take a day off during the exam? Yes, I definitely suggest you take a day off during the exam. Definitely. Book all of the Wednesday off. So for UK students, it opens at 11 o'clock. Book all of Wednesday off. And ideally, book all of Thursday off as well. 2 days for the UK students. Whether you take 1 or 2 days, I guess, depends on whether you can, and also on what time the exam opens as well. Any other questions? Will, am I going to the next year's health and safety event in Manchester in February? No, I've decided we're not doing any more exhibitions. They're just an absolute waste of money. I track very carefully the return on investment on things like that, and I get some sales. But an expo, you're looking anywhere between £5,000 to £10,000 in cost, depending on the size of the stands, plus hotel, travel, all the little toys and things and stuff like that. So no, we're not doing any more. You can really help us market Compassa if you'd be so kind by recommending us to everyone that you know. That would be super helpful. I'd really appreciate that. Word of mouth recommendations is like just our bread and butter. Like people come to us, we do a great job. As a general rule, they pass. They're really happy. They have a good time. Fun course as well. So people, most of our work is referrals. I don't spend any money on advertising anymore. I'm trying Facebook advertising at the moment, but even that's not great. Is the webinar going on YouTube? Yes, the webinar is going on YouTube. It will do. Someone's looking forward to the 10th of December. Yes, best of luck. Anyone sitting 10th of December, best of luck. Someone says, very insightful, reinforced confidence. Good. I'm glad it made you more confident and not terrifying you. I read somewhere on the internet that you have to scan the room you are doing the exam in with a camera. Is that true? No, that's not true. That's not true at all. However, that you do have to do that for your closing interview. So maybe you've read about the closing interview. So after the exam, your course provider will have to do a closing interview with you live on Zoom, like you and me, and I will ask you to take your camera and to do this with it. There you'll be turning it around the room. There you go. Little tour Compassa room. So is the door locked? Yes, the door's locked. Look, you can look at all our movie art. You can look at, oh look, there's an AT. Oh, there's an X-wing type, X-wing fighter, AT, another X-wing over there. More movie art. Yeah, there we are. So a bit of a mess in the background, and I'm back again. So yeah, you'll have to do a 360 tour of the room to show that there's no one with you or helping you, that the door is closed. But that's a closing interview, not the exam. The exam, do it wherever you like. Lone worker, up to date. Yeah, I'm alone. Yeah. What if something happens to you? Good. Precious is feeling better about the 10th of December. Good. That is good. That is definitely good. No humor, no sarcasm. That is definitely good. All right. Apologies to anyone I have insulted along the way. I really am sorry about that. But hopefully the insult was worth it, and hopefully you are well equipped now for your exam. That's really all. I'm not here to be popular, and I'm not popular, but I am here to help you pass this exam. All right. I think that's all question-wise. Listen, I'll let you go now. Best of luck, everyone, and see you on the other side of it.